Now, as we read Romans 12, 1 and 2, we are stepping into what is a new episode in this letter from the Apostle Paul to churches in Rome. But as we step into chapter 12, from what we've done so far, there's a sense in which Paul wants us to walk into Romans 12 backwards, right? Not because there's stuff in it he doesn't want us to see, but because he doesn't want us to stop seeing what we've already seen. If you have a look or listen to chapter 12, verse 1, he says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy." So he doesn't want you to leave that behind. He wants you to keep walking in the letter, but keep God's mercy in mind. That's what Paul wants to ask us this morning. Is God's mercy still in view? Because you will get lost in the rest of this letter if that is not prime central in your mind. Do we have the mercies of God in view? That's the first thing. If you're used to watching Netflix and used to binging things on Netflix, you'll know that when you go from one episode to another, it gives you a little cheeky option that says, skip recap. Most of us skip the recap. This little phrase, in view of God's mercy, is Paul's recap of everything he's said so far, but he is not letting you skip it. He's saying to us, what is going to come into view only makes sense if you keep all of this in view. Now, I don't know why the NIV translates it as in view of God's mercy. It's not that. It's in view of God's mercies in the original language. And I think that's important. His mercy is more. His mercies are many. His mercies are new every morning. And we've seen in Romans, getting his mercy in view, there has been a multitude of mercies. And Paul's saying, I'm not going to lead you by the hand into the next bit of the letter unless I can first turn your head and say, do not lose sight of all of those mercies. And we could look back at them, working our way through the rest of the book that we've already seen, and go, chapter 11, all of his glory, all of his uniqueness, all of his depth. Chapters 9 to 11, all of his faithfulness. Chapters 7 and 8, all of the spirit of adoption. Chapters 4, 5 and 6, all of his Son of righteousness. Second half, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, despite all of our sin. Chapter 1, verse 16, all of his good news, all of his power. Chapter 1, verse 7, all of his grace, all of his peace. Chapter 1, verse 2, all of his promises. All of that is all of his mercies. And he's saying to us this morning that you dare not step into the next bit of this letter if you have lost sight of them. Keep it in view. Get it in view. Remember a few weeks ago we talked about needing a panoramic lens to see it. And there is a sense in which you are straining to get an infinite amount of mercy and an infinite depth of riches and the infinite glory of God into your little line of sight. But that's what he's asking you to do. Is God's mercies in view? That's the first thing. If you're new to all this, you can summarize it as going, I was condemned, dead, and gone. But he has made me righteous, alive, and his Son. How? Not because of me, but because of mercies in his Son, by his Spirit. Mercies. Lose sight of that, you'll get lost in the rest of the letter. Now, we need to keep reading. But we read on, marvelling at mercy, amazed at grace, gasping at the depth. And then he says, therefore, brothers and sisters, I urge you. Now that word urgency has got urgency in it. There's a passion and enthusiasm behind that word. And he says, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Now there's a logic here And you need to see it. Therefore. There's a logic. That word is actually in the original language again. So what we read there as true and proper is actually one word. Logical. And so the Apostle Paul is trying to show us that there is a logic as you walk backwards into Romans 12, that keeping God's mercy in view will logically lead to offering a worship that is true. Okay? I'm trying to go with the rhymes this morning. Keeping God's mercy in view logically should lead to a worship that is true. Okay? That's the logic you need to clock. Let me try and demonstrate. If you were in Edinburgh in the festival month of August and you go up the Roma, you see thousands of street performers. And if you stop and watch a street performer, they do some of their show. A lot of it's just nonsense where they're building up and building tension. And eventually you get to the moment where they're almost at the climax of the show. And then what do they always do? Before they show you the big trick, they ask you for money, 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 money. And they do their spiel, don't they? And they've got all the jokes about just please fold it and put it in the hat and all these kind of things. They've now all got the electronic things you can do the contactless. But they normally say something like, pay me what you think it's worth. At which point we bolt before they can get the hat round to us. Pay me what you think it's worth. Now it's interesting if more shops and services worked on that basis, it would be quite interesting. So I go into the Tartan Tandoori tonight for a hoagie kebab, and instead of me having to hand over a fiver first and then them handing it to me, they would hand me the hoagie, I would eat it, and they would stand and watch, and then they would say, what do you think it's worth? Sometimes I feel like saying, £10,000! So good! Or if Darren comes round and he's coming to do a paint job for you, instead of him offering a quote, then doing the job and then you paying him, you get Daz to do the work first, and then you offer a quote. Give him a fiver. Now, that's not how life works, but the logic is legit, isn't it? What someone has done for you impacts what you offer them. That's the logic Paul wants us to learn. God's mercies to you, all of them, logically, should have a relationship to what you offer to Him. There is a rational, reasonable, a true and proper response. And so he says, with all of God's mercies in view, what should that lead to? The mercies of God should lead to the worship of God. That's why we're saying, with God's mercies in view, are you offering a worship that is true? Now notice what it doesn't say. Have a look at Romans chapter 12, verse 1. It doesn't say, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer 90 minutes on a Sunday morning. This is your true and proper worship. It doesn't say that, does it? He says, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. The point is, it's not some of you, some of the time. It's all of you, all of the time. All of His mercies deserve all of you. It's not like going to see the street performer and when they ask what it's worth, kind of scrambling around your pockets for any shrapnel you've got. That's not the right response to all of the mercies of God. It's the totality of you, every part of you, everything in you. So if you're a new Christian, it's a very good question to ask. Given what God has given to me in Christ, what should I give to Him? And Paul's answer is everything. Everything. Let's put a few of these words to work. Have a look first at the word bodies. Offer your bodies, he says. Now, some of us have grown up in a culture, and even in churches, that's made us think that Christianity is mainly about what we do with our minds. So it's about learning things in our minds, and being taught things in our minds, and believing things in our minds. Now, it is that, But what that's tended to do is make us think that worship is more about our brains than our bodies. Classic example of this, that some of our African and Caribbean brothers and sisters find very strange, is that when we worship God in church, we have the ability of worshipping God without using our bodies. Amen? That's strange. Lots of Scottish folk in the room, it appears to be what's going on, is that our minds are being really moved, but our bodies are motionless. And our brains are obviously doing something, but our bodies are rigid. Now we can laugh at that, but there is a danger to it. Because it can give us the impression, or give others the impression, that God only wants or only deserves part of us. Paul is saying that worship that is true involves all of you. And we inhibit ourselves when we make it only just about what's going on in our heads. Now, does that mean that everyone that throws their hands up in worship is a better Christian than other people? No. But there is a health to it being body and soul. But it's important for what you do tomorrow. Most of you, in what you do tomorrow, it will involve your body, I presume. So whether tomorrow you're using your body to plumb a toilet, cuddle a distressed child, administer antibiotics, paint a ceiling, engineer microwaves, or whatever David does, change a nappy, clean windows, operate on an animal, cook a meal, play football, carry a coffin, work on a production line, answer phones. Whatever you do with your body, getting the mercies of God in view can transform those things from just being acts of work into being acts of worship. What we do with our bodies is part of the response to all that He has done in His mercy. Your body's part of the gig. Another word to put to work. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. How does that sound? What does sacrifice mean? Do you know what it means? Death. That word sacrifice actually gets to the very heart of all of God's mercies. Jesus was sacrificed for me. That means He spent His life, He gave His life to death to save me from death. And Paul's using the logic again and going, if He sacrificed everything unto death for you, the logical, reasonable, true and proper response is that you sacrifice everything for Him. There's a change that happens when you get the mercies of God in view. You don't just look at your body and go, this is a living specimen whose lot is to be spoiled. Now your mind changes and you go, this is a living sacrifice whose lot is to be spent. To offer up your life to death. What does that mean? It might mean sacrificing a Sunday night to pray with God's people rather than spoiling myself on Netflix. Sacrifice money for giving rather than spoiling myself with more clothes. Sacrificing energy on hospitality rather than spoiling myself with me time. Sacrificing and living in the scheme rather than spoiling myself and climbing the property ladder. Sacrificing and leading diligently rather than spoiling myself in laziness. Sacrificing care for my family rather than spoiling myself at the altar of my addiction. Which actually is basically saying, I will sacrifice and worship God rather than sacrifice in worship of self. Sacrifice. And by the way, some of us are here going, yeah, I've been sacrificing for a long time and I'm absolutely exhausted. That's why you need to keep the logic in view. If you just look at what you're sacrificing, you will exhaust yourself. That's why you need to keep mercies in view. Because those mercies are an inexhaustible source of fuel for this living sacrifice. Final words to put to work on this little thing though. Have a look at the words holy and pleasing to God. It's a beautiful little phrase because it's reminding us that we don't just do this stuff in view of God's mercy, we do it in view of God. It just means that we're living set apart for him and for his smile. I'm his. The word holy is used in loads of different ways in the Bible, right? And often it's talking about really like grand and amazing things, but sometimes it's about Bob standard stuff. There's a plate in the Old Testament that someone is told to take and write, "Holy to the Lord." And do you know what? That changes everything for the plate. Plate's pure buzzing. Because it's no longer just going to be used in your house for mince and tatties and beans and toast. But this plate is now going, I'm holy to the Lord. I'm going to be used in God's house for God's stuff. Holy and pleasing to God means that you take a pen and you write on every single part of your body and every single part of your life, holy to the Lord. I'm no longer for common things. I am for special purposes. So that when someone comes to you at work and says, can you cut some corners and just bend the rules a little bit? Or sin comes and says, maybe you should take revenge just to get your own back here. Or somebody offers you something on the street or clickbait on a screen. Your reply to them is, not on this plate, mate. Holy to the Lord. Set apart for him and for his smile. I do what pleases him. So, there's the logic, right? The mercies of God in view. So I offer a worship that's true. It's not part of me, it's all of me. It's not spoiling myself, it's sacrificing for God. And it's not common use, it's special use, right? A worship that is true. Last bit, as we kind of walk backwards into Romans 12. So God's mercies in view, offering a worship that's true. But you've got to clock where the logic goes next. It goes from the mercies of God to the worship of God, and finally to the will of God. Have a look at verse 2. Don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. And listen to how it's described. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. So here's the third thing. Try and clock the logic in the rhyme. The mercies of God in view, offer a worship that's true, so that the will of God is proved. Okay, that's the logic. Now you prove something by using something. Jordan's on Sunday Switch, isn't he? One of our members, Jordan, sells swords. Not in the scheme, like zombie knives to guys on buses. To American tourists, basically, who want to take a sword home from Scotland and pretend that they're Mel Gibson. But in his shop, you can buy two different types of swords. They boil down to two: tempered or non-tempered. A tempered sword is a sword that's been forged in such a heat that it is proper strong. You could actually kill somebody with it. A non-tempered sword is one that hasn't been forged to the same degree, and so it's safe. If you were to use it, it would shatter. You can decide whether or not your husband would be appropriate to buy one or the other. But the point is, both of them could look exactly the same. The only way that you could tell which is by what? Fight! Then you find out. Paul is saying that the will of God is a little bit like that. It's not about proving that it is strong, but it's actually about proving that it is good, pleasant, and perfect. See, we've had our minds conformed by our culture to believe that God is bad, unpleasant, and flawed. But we've seen in Romans, if we're conformed to that, that ends up deforming us. And if we're conformed to that mindset, it ends up condemning us. And it's as if God is standing in front of us, urging us, appealing to us, pleading with us, saying, let me prove myself to you. Test me, use me, prove me. Allow your mind to be transformed in such a way that you'll experience, through worshipping me, that everything I have promised is completely true. But to prove it, you've got to use it. You've got to wield the sword. Again, come back to logic, right? Paul's logic is, it's if you go all in that you will experience that God is all good. But going all in comes first. My sense that for some of us in the room is that we've got a hesitation to go all in. We're kind of half in, half out on the Jesus thing. There's a hesitation that's maybe saying, I don't know if God is good and he is pleasant and he is perfect, and so I don't want to give him everything in case he's not. And so we're in kind of limbo, maybe holding off on baptism until we think we're ready. Or maybe still smoking weed because we're not sure that we can cope without it. Or in some other way, holding off on repentance or holding off on obedience because we're not convinced that God would pass the test. You've got to follow the logic of the gospel flow here. It's when you see all of God's mercies and when you respond of all of your worship that you will experience that he is all that he has promised he would be. His will for me is good, his presence with me, his purpose for me is pleasant, his path for me is perfect. But it's only as you test God that you will prove God. The using is the proving. And so I want to urge you, like Paul does, if you're in that kind of limbo of going, I don't want to go all in case he's not all good, he says, the flow is all of his mercies, all of worship, and he will prove, he will. He's everything he promised he would be. And that's the Christian life, proving the goodness of God. We're going to see it. Jack, after we've sung a couple of songs, is going to read the rest of Romans 12. And the rest of Romans 12 is about proving that the obedience of faith is the pathway of freedom. And we're going to listen to Paul as he encourages us to listen. I'll prove, God will prove, humility is better than pride. That church is better than individualism. That generosity is more healthy than selfishness. That love is better than indifference. That zeal is preferable to laziness. That hospitality is better than hiding away. That harmony is far better than quarreling. And that peace is more perfect than revenge. And God's urging us, saying, come and prove me. And you'll see that I am good, pleasant, and perfect. So, do you see the logic? The mercies of God in view. Offer a worship that's true. And you will experience the will of God proved.